Fusion Mobile, quality e-learning experience on the go.
We have now come to the end of the political parties in Nigeria, and we have seen the parties that existed during Nigeria's independence, before its independence, the ones that existed in the Third Republic, and the ones that existed in the Fourth Republic. We would now move into a new topic, which is military rule in Nigeria. Military rule in Nigeria is the next topic we are looking into. For us to start, we must first of all trace the history of military rule in Nigeria. And for us to do this, there are some names that we need to mention so as to enhance our understanding of how military rule came into existence in Nigeria. Remember that before Nigeria's independence, there was nothing like military rule, and even at her independence, there was nothing like military rule. But the rule of the military came into existence as the country enjoyed its independence, and the coming of the military rule led to the end of Nigeria's First Republic. And the history goes this way. In the early hours of January 15, 1966, Nigeria witnessed the first military coup led by Major Chukwuma Nzogo and other majors in the army. It was a bloody military intervention in the political history of Nigeria. Some key political leaders, example the Prime Minister Sabakatafa Belewa, S.L. Akintola, Premier of the Western Region, the Minister of Finance Chief Okotie Ebo, Sir Madu Bello, Premier of the Northern Region, and many other top-ranking officers in the armed forces were killed. Later, Major General Aguiyi came into the scene to take the mantle of leadership of the country. His tenure was, however, short-lived. A counter-coup was staged on July 29, 1966, and Aguiyi was toppled and killed, and Lieutenant Colonel Yakubu Gowon took over the political leadership of the country. General Yakubu Gowon spent 9 years in office and was removed by Brigadier Murtala Mohammed. Also, after spending 200 days in office, Murtala Mohammed was assassinated in an abortive coup led by Lieutenant Colonel Dimka on February 13, 1976. General Olusegun Obasanjo, the next in command to Murtala Mohammed, became the head of state. It was at this time that the military kept to its promise of handing over power to a democratically elected civilian government, which was done in the Second Republic from 1979 to 1983. However, the civilian government was going for the second time in office when Major General Muhammad Buhari, through a military coup, sacked democratically elected government. Major General Ibrahim Babangida removed Buhari on August 27, 1985, through what was described as palace coup, in quotes, and subsequently made himself the president of Nigeria, abandoning the title of the head of state. An unsuccessful coup attempt was staged against Babangida by Major Gideon Oka led military coup on April 22, 1990. There was also the Vasta coup attempt in December 1985. Babangida retired from the army after stepping aside in 1993. He had earlier set up an interim government with Chief Ernest Shonekon as the head of state. Lieutenant General Abacha sacked the interim government and assumed the new military head of state of Nigeria. Abacha died on the 8th of June 1998 and was succeeded by General Abdusalami Abubakar. This is the history of the military rule in Nigeria. Characteristics of military rule. Number 1, the structure of the military is hierarchical and centralized. Number 2, discipline and obedience to higher commands are considered of fundamental importance. Number 3, any form of government in a military setup is usually dictatorial. Number 4, the military does not tolerate opposition. Number 5, they do not operate with a constitution. Whenever they are drawn into the realm of politics, they suspend the constitution. Number 6, the military separates itself from civilian society. This is done through separate barracks, distinctive uniforms, etc. Number 7, values held by members of the armed forces, especially the officers, may distinguish them from the rest of society in a way that is not true of other comparable groups, such as the police force. These are some of the features of military rule. We will now look into reasons for military intervention in Nigeria. Why has the military intervened in politics? Number 1, we have tribal loyalty. This is a problem facing Nigeria as a nation. This takes precedence over loyalty to the central government, as people cherish and value their tribe over others. Number 2, regional differences. Differences among the regions were so acute as to precipitate crisis, leading to direct assumption of power. Number 3, regional / state-based political parties. Political parties of the First Republic were all regional political parties. In fact, no one of them commanded a nationwide support. For example, the MPC was for the north, the NCNC was for the east, and the AG was for the west. This polarization of political parties can cause friction among them, and of course does not make for unity. Number 4, dispute over census results. This is another reason for military involvement in politics, because of the 1962 and 1963 census results. The first in 1962 was rejected, as many people claimed the result was falsified, that the figures were inflated. Also, the one of 1963 was also rejected on the same ground. The essence of population census cannot be ignored, and this explains why most of the results were inflated. Number 5, politicization of the army. The military of the First Republic maintained her status quo and thereafter became politicized. Appointments and promotions were based on tribal and political sentiments, not on seniority or merits. Number 6, mismanagement of public funds. The extent at which money meant for development is diverted into other projects and even into private accounts are enough reasons for military intervention. Politicians of the First and Second Republics and even some military leaders have displayed this arrogance in the highest proportion. Number 7, allegation of corruption, nepotism, and sectionalism. This led to the military intervention in Nigeria. Many were involved in spending the nation's wealth with reckless abandon. Many politicians were so rich that they are making a public display of their wealth. Nepotism and sectionalism played major roles in appointments, promotions, especially in the civil and public services. These and many others constitute the reason for military intervention in Nigerian politics. We will now go to the structure of military rule in Nigeria, 1985 through 1993. Number 1, the Armed Forces Ruling Council. This was the supreme body which performed lawmaking functions. This was composed of the service chiefs, top-ranking military officers, Inspector General of Police, Attorney General, with the President as chairman. Number 2, the Council of Ministers. It was composed of the President, Vice President, and the Ministers, some of whom are military officers, while others were civilians. The Council performed executive functions with the President as chairman. Number 3, the National Council of States. It is composed of the head of states, the Chief of General Staff, Minister of Defense, Service Chiefs of the Army, the Navy and the Air Force, the Inspector General of Police, Attorney General, and all military governors. The Council was charged with coordination and harmonization of the work of the various state governments and the federal military government. Former heads of states were also members. Number 4, the judiciary. It remained the same as in the civilian era, with Chief Justice as the head, inclusive various tribunals which had judges and military officers as members. Number 5, the civil service. The secretary to the military government is head of public services. Director Generals replaced the permanent secretaries by the 1988 civil service reforms. The achievements of military rule in Nigeria. Number 1, it led to infrastructural development, such like road construction, airports, bridges, and establishment of institutions. Number 2, the military prevented the country from breaking into units. Example, the Nigerian Civil War. Number 3, the military initiated various programs which was aimed at improving the economy of the country, e.g., iron and steel industries, Operation Feed the Nation, OFN. Number 4, state creation. The military succeeded in the creation of states and local government councils. For example, 12 states were created out of the former 4 regions on May 27, 1967. 19 states on February 3, 1976 were also created by Murtala Mohammed's administration. Number 5, it also encouraged regional cooperation. General Yakubu Gowon, for example, was one of the founding fathers of the Economic Community of West African States, ECOWAS. Number 6, Nigerian foreign policy. The military brought about a positive change in the Nigerian foreign policy, e.g., Nigeria led the struggle against apartheid and colonialism, thereby making Nigeria a frontline state. Number 7, it brought about local government reforms. This they did in 1976 and 1990, making it a one-tier local government structure. These are some of the achievements of military rule in Nigeria so far. We have the weaknesses of military regime in Nigeria. Since it has achieved many, let us look into the areas where it has not achieved, where it has proven to be weak. Number one, the military regime was constituted by military personnel who lack both administrative and political experience to govern. Thus, it encourages incompetence or inexperience. Number two, the military regime do not tolerate criticism, and therefore it is hostile to critics of public opinion. Number three, all military leadership are dictatorship. They rule by decrees and edicts that they may not be challenged in any court of law. Number four, the independence of the judiciary was sometimes not guaranteed, and many of their decrees contain ouster clauses that render the judiciary powerless. Number five, the military rule was responsible for the civil war that claimed millions of lives, which came between 1967 and 1970. Number six, failure to conduct reliable and acceptable census results has been one of the failures of the military leadership in Nigeria. The failure to conduct reliable and acceptable census in the country has brought doubts in the minds of most Nigerians about the sincerity of the military on issues of national question. Number seven, military leadership is undemocratic, as leaders are not chosen through the ballots. These are some of the weaknesses of military rule in Nigeria. We will now look into measures that could be taken to prevent military intervention in West Africa. Look, Nigeria. What are the measures that could be taken to prevent military intervention in West Africa or Nigeria? Number one, military intervention should be outlawed by the constitution of the individual country. Number two, there should be accountability on the part of the politicians who are in government or planning to be in government. Number three, the game of politics should be played according to the laid down rules and regulations. Number three, ethnic politics should be avoided by the politicians. Number five, there should be good leadership on the part of all elected officials who are to serve in different areas of government. Number six, the elected government should be responsive to the yearning of the people. Number seven, there should be free and fair elections in the countries. These are some of the measures that could be taken to prevent military intervention in West Africa / Nigeria. Lastly, we'll look into the process of return to civilian rule. The following steps were taken by the military government to return Nigeria to civil rule in October 1979. Number one, the Constitutional Drafting Committee was set up to draft a constitution for the country. The Constitutional Drafting Committee was set up by the Supreme Military Council under the chairmanship of Chief Rotimi Williams to fashion out a new constitution for the country. Membership was 49 and it began work in October 1975. It completed the work in September 1976 and published a 2-volume report on the new constitution. Number two, later in 1976, a constituent assembly was established with 190 members indirectly elected by local government units, and 40 other members were appointed by the federal military government, with the chairman as Justice Udo Udoma, which started work in December 1979. The assembly was to ratify the draft constitution. However, some amendments were effected by the military and at the end it was promulgated and came into effect on October 1, 1979. Number 3, an electoral commission in the name FEDECO, which stands for Federal Electoral Commission, was set up to take charge of all issues concerning election administration and conduct in the country. Number 4, local government election was conducted in 1976 on non-party basis. Number 5, lifting of ban on political activities and end of states of emergency. Number 6, after the ban was lifted, about 50 political associations were formed, but only 5 were duly registered as having satisfied the laid down conditions by the electoral body. The parties which were registered were the NPN, the UPN, the NPP, the GNPP, and the PRP. Number 7, the conduct of general elections in 1979 also is a process of return to civil rule. These are some of the processes of returning government to civilian rule, as we have seen in our study today. So we have come to the end of military rule in Nigeria. We have looked at its features, its history. We have also looked at its achievements and its weaknesses. We've also considered the structure of its rule in Nigeria. We have also seen the reasons why it has intervened in politics. And finally, we have looked at the process of returning power to the civilians. So all these things constitute what we need to know under Nigerian military rule.